Good day, welcome to another episode of Star Wars Minute. It's your daily show where we analyze, we scrutinize, we celebrate, and we talk about Solo, a Star Wars story, 1 minute at a time. I'm Alex Robinson from alexrobinson.fun.
I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
I'm Suzen Tekla Kruglnska from a videocast podcast called The Comedy Film Funnel. Find it on YouTube.
Welcome back, Susan.
Thank you.
We're talking about minute 79 today. Minute 79 of Solo, a Star Wars story. Starts off with Kira telling Han that the coaxium canisters will have thermal displays. And it ends a minute later with L337 asking Lando if it's a mass breakout.
Is it?
We get a little bit of what to me seemed a little bit of world building where Kira says if the coaxium gets below 35 standard. So I think this might be the first time we hear a temperature scale given.
That's what I was just looking up. I was trying to figure out if there were any references to that, because I went looking in Empire. They're famously talking about the cold. Speeders aren't ready for the cold. Temperatures dropping too rapidly, but no specific measurements given. No.
Right. Yeah.
And I couldn't find any references to in the original trilogy. Could not find any mentions of specific temperatures. And
yeah, I can't see why it would come up. Apparently in the Star Wars universe, this has been discussed before. 0 is freezing in the Star Wars universe. That doesn't necessarily mean it's Celsius, because we don't know what the Celsius
standard 0 standard.
Right, but we don't know if 100, like Celsius 100 is boiling water.
Right.
But we don't know if that's the same. We don't know what the upper limit is on the scale there. So interesting that they use frozen water. Still use frozen water as the 0.
I was going to say, is it water? Is the freezing point of water? Or is it
0 is the freezing point, is the point at which water freezes.
Okay.
Aren't we the dummies for not doing that?
Oh yeah. But we also
Pete is a Celsius user.
Trying to. I'm a trying to be a metric convert.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it seems.
It is kind of dumb that 32 is our spot where water freezes. Good job, Fahrenheit. You had one job.
But yes, 35 standard. This
35 standard
is where they needed that muscle. Remember, they needed the muscle. This wasn't for this job necessarily, but they needed muscle for the gang. I looked it up. It was Corso. Remember, we were talking about the other guy who died.
Corso, right?
And the Corso even more so. Then they needed. Then Chewbacca was the new muscle for the gang, and they needed muscle. And here's Han. I'm sure is kicking himself because he just let Chewbacca go, and then he's like, oh, and now we have to lift all the heavy things. Whereas Chewbacca might be like, I'm gonna go free slaves instead of lifting the heavy things. It's really better for everybody.
It's also funny that he's in a mine filled with Wookiees, and he's the one who has to Wookiee slaves, and he's the one who has to lift up all this stuff. So.
Quote unquote.
Funny, yes.
Cut to a bunch of Wookiees, a bunch of recently freed Wookiees just sitting there eating popcorn,
watching him eat it,
lift heavy things.
So I mean, before it's refined, so it's unrefined, so you can kind of knock it around. I mean, it's supposed to be very volatile, right? Like, so when it's refined, you got to be careful of how you hold it. But I'm assuming because he's kind of banging those canisters. So what matters now is the temperature. It's volatile temperature-wise. Is that how it works? Because he definitely seems to be kind of smashing those canisters on the ground pretty hard. But I assume if you hit it hard enough, it would explode. I don't know. I mean, are we supposed to? What's the tension? Is there supposed to be tension here that this could explode very easily? I mean, because you don't really feel that too much.
No. Later on, they definitely are doing it later on when they're going through the Kessel Run. Woody Harrelson's like, it's at 55 standard. He's constantly updating them. So. Yeah, it's weird that they give you two different parameters for it blowing up. It sort of parallels how there's almost like a superfluous thing to there's like a coaxium mine and a spice mine. There's Wookiees and there's droid slaves. There's this stuff will blow up if it gets too cold, and it'll blow up if it gets too jostled. So it seems par for the course.
I mean, I almost wish they had played that up a little bit more. You know, I know they do that a little bit on the ship, and is the temperatures dropping or rising or whatever. But you know, like I love that kind of tension where you're, you know, like Wages of Fear. You know, is one of my favorite movies. And like this whole idea, they did that on The Mandalorian too, where they had to, you know, transport something very volatile. And I like that kind of angle, and I don't think they played it up nearly enough. And you know, again, he's sort of banging this stuff on the floor, and it doesn't seem to matter that much.
Yeah.
Counterpoint, I'm glad they didn't do it.
Oh, yeah?
Here. Because it didn't, I feel like there's so much going on, you don't need that tension here. But, yes, I don't know. I can see where you're coming from, and I would, you know, if you're going to make it about that, I think it would have to be about that it would be like, okay, they get to the thing and then they have to carefully get it there without having a riot going on. But once you have a riot going on and it's just about getting to it and getting out, then I feel like you can't throw that
layer,
extra, you know, the peril fatigue.
The bounty hunter.
Peril fatigue. So
all my other notes have to do with Lando.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Let's start out. So we cut to Lando with the hologram recorder, and it's neat to see a hologram recorder.
Yeah, that was my first note, was we finally get to see one, because we've always been wondering about that. I guess technically we saw one in R2, but we didn't. This is the first exclusively hologram device we've seen.
Handheld.
Lando
held.
It just always seems to me we should already have this technology here on Earth. Now, if you guys could do this show as a hologram like that, would you do it? If you had the choice. Little blue three-dimensional heads talking about Star Wars.
I don't feel a particular, I mean, I would do it if it was the industry standard, the way kind of doing video podcasts now has kind of become more of a thing.
You lose the backgrounds, which are fun. Backgrounds are fun.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about it, maybe we don't prefer those things. You know, maybe it's not. Like, maybe there's reasons not to do that. You know, because, all you have is this floating head. I mean, you know, it's something, you'd see why he would love it as a narcissist, but you don't have you don't have a feeling of background. You don't have, you know.
Well, I imagine it's probably a lot like microphones where different situations, like this is almost just like a portrait thing, as opposed to like if you were filming like a speech by like Palpatine's doing a speech, you would probably do something where you'd see more of the backgrounds and, you know, like using a different type of microphone.
Is more like, you know, like Diane, you know, personal handheld recorder. This is like voice memos.
Yeah.
Versus, you know,
audible book reading. Like if you could have that option on an audible book reading, like have
Lando reading me the book.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I assume that's what he's. I guess I assume that's what he's thinking. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of like voices that I find soothing that I would like to have read me a book. That you could get, you know, like the idea that there'll be voice fonts and then mash that up with that we could create, you know, 3-dimensional computer generated models of anyone too. Then we can just go back and have historically anyone. You know, I can have, you know, like James Mason read me Hop on Pop. That'd be awesome.
And it would sound a little something like this.
Yeah.
But would it still be soothing if his little disembodied head was there reading it to you?
I think that would be awesome,
You'd have it on your nightstand. And your nightstand, you'd have a little disembodied James Mason head.
Right. But he's got the book in front of him in my model.
In blue.
So
yeah.
It's like thumbing through it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Uh-huh.
I think I would probably use holograms more for like the same way like people like use art or like pictures or something. Like instead of having a photo of my loved one, I would have a 3-dimensional representation of their head and them moving around and smiling and stuff like that. I guess the thing with like it's kind of the same problem with like FaceTime, I find, is that like if I'm listening to an audiobook, I don't want to have to stare at Lando's blue head. I just want to listen to it. I don't want to have to be visually locked into staring at something when I'm just receiving audio.
Well, you don't, but he's just reading the book. James Mason is just sitting in a chair reading the book. You don't have to look at him the whole time. It's like, you know, being read to as a child. You can just drift off. And
he doesn't get mad if he doesn't think you're paying attention.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Well, you know, before we get into the content of his thing, I also like the fact that, almost like to rub it in our face, we see it from the point of view of, we see the camera pointed at Lando, and we see the back of the hologram Lando's head. You know what I mean? Which is like we don't know how the camera sees what. If Lando shaved a little bald spot in the back of his head, does the hologram see that, or is it just kind of filling in details from what it knows Lando's head looks like?
Yeah, I wonder how that works. It seems like it should be somehow it captures the back. Yeah, I don't know that, but that is really puzzling.
I'm assuming it's bouncing. Yeah, it's sending some kind of like sonar, bouncing waves off of to read what that looks like.
Yeah. So here's the other.
Why it's not always, full color. It's always kind of bluish because it might not be able to read everything in color, but it can get the shape of it.
Right.
It's beautiful. Sorry, I was just going to say, though, it's a beautiful note of how narcissistic he is because he's just staring at himself,
Yeah, that is funny.
Yeah. We've seen other people record holograms without having to look at themselves to do it.
Yeah, he's just looking into his own eyes.
And also, like, we see through holograms, right? Like if someone's walking behind it, we can kind of see they have a bit of transparency to them. So I feel like when you look at the back of Lando's head, you should also be able to see the front of his head. Because it's also projecting a Lando face, and if the back of his head is transparent, then you'd be able to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, but I guess it would be too weird to see, though. You'd be able to, it would look disturbing if you saw like his eyes. You know what I mean? Right.
So it's not. Yes.
Well, they do that. Like if you're looking at a ship, like if you're at a a meeting where they're planning a battle and they're showing the outlines of the ships and the whatever trajectory in outer space, maps of space, then it seems very 3D. They keep it very loose. But yeah, if you're looking at so if you're in a council meeting and you have a hologram of Yoda sitting next to you, it's going to be pretty solid. I guess there must be adjustment to how it looks.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that. Although then you got me thinking about like I don't know, like super trend. What if you adjust the spectrum a little bit so you can make it more of like an X-ray? So you're getting like Lando's skeleton. Are there filters for these kinds of things? That's what I'm thinking now.
Oh yeah, they're probably. I mean, assuming if we have filters on our things, I'm assuming that they have similar thing in there.
Yeah, you could put little bunny ears on Yoda, like like big-eyed. They would have that technology, certainly.
They probably would. Like, are there laws against using it for?
That's what I was going to say. It almost seems like they would not allow that because it would be too easy to deepfake being somebody else. You know what I mean?
Like that. Can Yoda do that? Can Yoda do this?
That's only a Sith. Only a Sith can. Not from a Jedi.
Yeah. Well, so here's this part.
The content.
Before even, I'll give one behind the scenes note from the Kazdan. I'm going back to the Kazdan's. 50 things you didn't know about Solo: A Star Wars Story. Number 37. Would the movie have made more money if it had just been 2 hours of Lando dictating his memoirs into his holo recorder? Perhaps. You live and learn.
Yeah.
So that's it's definitely a cool bit there.
It'd be a great spinoff to do that. I'm surprised they actually didn't do that. That would be really fun. Have you Audible, do it for Audible, plug it on Amazon, have a whole thing that Donald Glover reads. That would be so much fun. I would
love to have Donald Glover reading the Han Solo adventure. I mean, the Lando Calrissian Adventures by L. Neil Smith. That would be a good. Well, speaking of those, let's get to the content.
Mm-hmm.
The Calrissian Chronicles. You say
Chapter 5.
Yeah, and this is as close as we get to the Mind Harp of Sharu being canonized because. Mm-hmm. Lando says that they weren't impressed with the Sharu, but then they got to the temple and there they saw it. But then he gets interrupted.
Well, he didn't like them because they had no sense of humor or style.
Yeah. Right.
So
two things that we know are important to Lando.
These are you assume these are monks, right? Like it's a temple, right?
Well, I mean, things could be different now in new canon.
Yeah.
But the let's see, the Sharu, I had a thing up before. There's a sketch of them
Oh, I didn't. I looked this up and I found almost nothing. I mean, I didn't look as deep as you.
And again, the sketch is based on stuff that's no longer.
Pete has access to forbidden information.
Yeah, from working at that planet. They're like a kind of tall, skinny, emaciated elves. They're an ancient humanoid species that built the colossal plastic pyramids on the worlds of the Rafa system.
Plastic pyramids.
The plastic pyramid. That's what Earth is going to be known for eventually.
Yeah. And the mind harp, of course, is a strange object that constantly changed form as it shifted through dimensions.
I saw a drawing of an illustration of it, and it's like one of those, optical illusions where it's a fork that looks like it has three prongs or only two prongs, and I think they use that as the visual. It's easy in a book to describe. Oh, it's a fork that changes through two dimensions, but to actually have to depict that visually.
Yeah, you can't put that in a movie.
Well, you could.
Put that in. Well, you could, man.
Yeah, CGI now.
Well, speaking of things that were in the book that are hard to depict. I wanted to take some time while we're talking about Lando's adventures. I wanted to take some time to talk about Vuffy Ra, if I may.
Vuffy Ra. What is the name again?
Vuffy Ra.
Vuffy Ra.
Vuffy Ra. Vuffy Ra was if the Han Solo books, the Han Solo Adventures by Brian Daley had Bollocks and Blue Max. Those are the droid companion. Where in the Lando Adventures by L. Neil Smith, he had Vuffy Ra, who was a 5-tentacled starfish-looking droid.
A droid with tentacles. Yeah. Okay.
Now, and this is cool because Vuffy Ra comes from a different planet, a whole different culture, society. So, like an alien species that he, again, going back to what I was saying earlier in the week, he was built to more fit in with that planet and the life forms on that planet. And his name, Vuffy Ra, is a series of numbers and letters so it's like R2, except in the language of that culture.
Nice.
But Vuffy Ra is looking at there was no official, because these weren't graphic novels, they weren't, they were illustrated really. There's no official depiction of Vuffy Ra. Most people kind of fall into it looks almost like Starro the Conqueror, where it's got like a pentagram in the middle with an eye. Based on the description, it's kind of a pentagram in the middle with like a domed eye, and then these tentacles that eventually kind of taper down into points. Although if you look on the cover of, I don't know if it's Mind Harp or if it's one on the cover of one of the books, there's basically what looks like an R2 unit with tentacles sticking out, which is meant to be a depiction of Vuffy Ra, but that totally doesn't match up with most other people's illustrations or how it's described in the book, really. But now
that you mention it, I drew this character without even realizing it.
Just now? It came to you in a vision?
No, I was drawing a picture of Lando, and I wanted to include a deep cut thing from the books, and so I found out about this character, and I totally forgot that was the name, but I remember it was a droid with tentacles.
Sure.
So funny. Anyway, proceed with what you were going to say.
It is the cover of Mind Harp of Shire. I'm looking at the illustration now, and it's a weird. But I know, as we all know, the paintings on the covers of sci-fi books always match exactly the content and what's inside. Vuffy Ra did not officially make it out of Legends, although there's a Vuffy Ra popped back up in years later in things. I think there's like a Dark Forces tie-in or something like that had you meet up with Lando and you see he's hanging out with Vuffy Ra. But in Solo, a Star Wars story, Solo, a Star Wars story, Tales from Vandor, which is a book that was released to tie into this film, which is a kind of a first-person narrative, almost like a journal from, I think, encompassing some of the characters. You do get and I think it's an entry from Lando talking about adventures that he has. And in that, it's either implied or explicitly stated that L337 took on the identity of Vuffy and had many of the same adventures as mentioned in the Lando Calrissian adventures, but with Lando as L3 posing as another droid named Vuffy for some reason. So
okay, now I'm finally like knowing what you're talking about. Kind of, I sort of remember something. I mean, I'm not like as much into this off movie lore, but now I actually even have a picture of that tentacle thing because I think I did see it somewhere along the. I found it.
Imagine if the Pentagon got up and walked away.
Yeah. It's so silly. Yeah, it didn't really. It was like, yeah, okay. But all right. So yeah. So she was. It was originally supposed to be that thing, and then L3 kind of replaced her, and so they worked it into the lore that she took on her identity or something like that.
Yeah. In passing, they say that and for a while L3 was known as Vuffy, and we did we saw a mind harp and a flame wind and a
star cave.
Star cave. There you go. So it's interesting that like I'm okay with that. I think as I like the idea of Vuffy Ride. I like reading about it, but also if you were to you can't really have a Pentagon tentacle droid being a member of the crew here, I don't think, and have it look quote unquote realistic, but I don't think you could have it be believable, and I could be wrong, but I don't think it would work having a main part of the crew being a Pentagon with tentacles.
It's a kind of character that needs to be in cartoons. You really can't do it, in this kind of movie. Yeah.
Right. So then if you're going to take the droid that we do have, who we all like, and then make her the Lando's companion for these things because it matches with the content of that, I'm fine with that. I think I'm not going to be sitting here grumbling about like, that's not the real Vuffy Ra. If you can weave it in there, make it's like the kind of little snips and edits that they do to Marvel to make MCU stuff all work out. Like for the most part, it makes sense for storytelling purposes and is still somewhat, if not faithful, at least deferential to the existing content. And so this is, I feel like, the same way. And so like, why don't we just make it Lando was hanging out with this droid that we all like and we've already established that he had lots of adventures with her. Let's make it that he had those adventures.
So I was just going to say, is there an audience that disappointed that didn't happen? Are there people disappointed?
I don't know. There have to be.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like the Lando novels are obscure enough where any fans of them are, like you said, there's always going to be one or two hardcore people who are like, they should totally film those. But I feel like anyone who read those books and enjoyed them is just going to be happy that they're being referenced and is not going to be like.
For I bet there's a handful of
if
people
they are,
who
then that's worse than fighting robots. If you're the kind of person who gets upset that they're not including the hardcore details, then you might have a psychological problem.
And when were those books? When were those books out?
The first one came out June 12th, 1983.
There you go.
So we're at the 40th anniversary of the book.
Almost.
First one. I looked up some information about L. Neil Smith, the author of the book, and it turned out to be a fascinating rabbit hole to go down.
Wow.
I read an interview with him. He said that he got the assignment and they told him you can't use anything from the movies except for Lando. And he's like, well, I have to use if I can't use the Millennium Falcon, I'm not doing it. And so they're like, okay, you can use the Millennium Falcon. He was given, I think it was like 16 weeks or something to write all 3 novels, and as he described it, he squandered it, so he had to wind up writing all 3 novels in 9 weeks. So basically, 3 weeks. The Mind Harp of Sharu, Flame Wind of Ocean, and the Star Cave of
Thonbaka.
There's an interview with him on a website. If you Google his name, you can find it. But the more interesting aspect of him was that he was, and I say was because unfortunately he passed away just last year, a hardcore libertarian. In fact, in 2000, he ran for president on the libertarian ticket.
Wow.
Only in Arizona was he on the ballot. He was none of the other states because there was an inter-libertarian squabble where he wound up on the ballot in Arizona, and there was a different libertarian candidate on every other thing. But yeah, and he's written some libertarian themed science fiction novels that I'm sure people will be interested in checking out. If that is their idea of, I didn't write down the names, but if you look up L. Neil Smith, there's a lot of stuff about him and his libertarian interests. So, including his other novels. So that's all I have for minute number 79. You guys have anything else you want to bring up? Susan, do you like Donald Glover as Lando?
Yes. Yeah, he's a crowd pleaser for sure. He's very good at it, and very believable. Like you could pick, he matches Billy D. Williams for sure. Like you just can't help feeling like there is a match there somewhat. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I love him, and I really hope they can get him. For a series. We'll see. It seems like, I don't know. What's he doing? Is he doing anything else? What's he been up to? I don't know. Isn't he?
Donald Glover. A new season of Atlanta. His show Atlanta just dropped. So that was.
So now he's available, is what you're saying.
There's a chance. What you're saying is there is a chance. Well, all right then. I guess that will wrap up minute number 79. Susan, remind you did The Shining and Rosemary's Baby in the movies, not by minute, by
chunks, by 3 minutes and 27 seconds for The Shining and 6 minutes and 66 seconds for Rosemary's Baby. Yep. And
And now you and Joe.
Now, Comedy Film Funnel. Yeah, we're coming out with Tati's Playtime will be our next. That'll be out by the time this is shown. That'll be out. So look for that.
Now, I know you guys did Brain Candy. What other movies have you done?
Brain Candy. One of our big ones is The In-Laws. Everybody seems to like our In-Laws episode.
The original one?
Of course. Are you kidding? And the original Bedazzled. That's the biggest. That was our first episode, and that's the biggest. Everybody loves that episode. So that's a good, Bedazzled with Dudley Moore and Peter Cook. So yeah, it's been really fun. And we've done the Marx Brothers. We go all over the place, like comedy-wise.
Nice. Me
and Joe Dater, New Yorker cartoonist Joe Dater, who I have a feeling you'll all be seeing kind of soon. Not too distant future here in
if we bring him up 3 times, then he has to appear.
Yeah. People should check out those podcasts, and they should also check out Pete and I also do a podcast on the side. I do the Godfather Minute with my brother. We are currently about 70 minutes into Godfather Part 2. So still we're about a third of the way through the movie, so still time to get on board if you're holding off. You can find that wherever you get podcasts. And Pete, you might be at the end of we were just talking in the green room. Are you completed with ABCDTOS?
It's just about, I got a, temporal distortion here, crossing my streams to figure out where we are and what's going on. And, but, we are just about, done with, actually, I think it works out that this week we just wrapped, ABCDTOS, the original series, episodes. We went through all of them alphabetically.
Congratulations.
And we are going to take a little bit of a breather. I think maybe every month or so we're going to drop an episode covering one of the Star Trek original cast movies alphabetically. And then we'll see where we go from there. But if you like Star Trek,
wrapping up another show.
Good news, we did it. Yay, thank you.
And people should listen to those and then listen to us tomorrow for another Friday episode of Star Wars Minute.
Friday episode.